This is another example of how incomplete the investigation is and how they have tried everything or done everything to avoid the truth in the matter. Based on the witnesses that I've interviewed and the evidence, I believe that, Suge Knight ultimately called for the hit.
The other vehicle pulls up alongside, and the driver shoots numerous times into the vehicle.
He was a clean-cut detective in a dirty department, an honest cop in a city built on cover-ups. And the deeper he dug into the murder of the Notorious B.I.G., the closer he got to the truth and the more dangerous his world became.
Who he believes was responsible for the shooting of Biggie.
And he thought it was who?
I don't know.
His name was Russell Poole. The LAPD assigned him to crack the most high-profile murder in hip-hop history. But what he found wasn't just about Biggie. It wasn't even about Suge Knight. It was about a web of dirty cops, blood money, gang ties, and a truth nobody wanted to hear.
What other reason could there be? The reason being is because they do not want to expose to the public that Los Angeles police officers were involved in the conspiracy to kill Biggie Smalls.
And just when he was ready to speak out, they shut him down. They forced him out. And years later, he died suddenly in the middle of a meeting while discussing the case. Some call it a heart attack, others call it a silencing. This is the story of Russell Poole, the detective Suge Knight didn't want anywhere near the truth.
They ended up transporting them, Mr. Poole, to the hospital and where he died of his injuries, or the heart attack.
The day Russell Poole got too close to the truth. It started with a badge, a body, and a question no one wanted answered. March 9th, 1997, the Notorious B.I.G. was murdered in cold blood, gunned down in a drive-by shooting after a vibe party at the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles. The killer disappeared into the night. No arrests, no justice.
One of the biggest celebrity crimes is the murder of rap legend Biggie Smalls, aka Notorious B.I.G., still unsolved 24 years later.
Then came Russell Poole, a respected LAPD detective with a clean record and a reputation for integrity. When Poole was assigned to the case shortly after Biggie's death, he didn't realize he was stepping into a political minefield. But that day, he made a decision that would change and ultimately end his life. He chose to tell the truth. Poole began pulling at threads. What started as routine detective work quickly exposed something darker: connections between death row records, gang-affiliated cops in the LAPD, and the possible orchestration of Biggie's murder from behind prison walls. The deeper he dug, the louder the silence became. He discovered that Officer Mack, a member of the elite Rampart Division, owned a black Impala matching the description of the shooter's car. He found that Mack's college buddy, Amir Muhammad, bore an eerie resemblance to a police sketch of the shooter and had visited Mack in prison after his arrest for bank robbery. That same robbery, believed by informants to have helped pay for Biggie's murder. And that was just the beginning. As Poole pieced together the evidence, a shocking theory began to form, one that pointed not to random gang violence, but to a coordinated hit, possibly ordered by Suge Knight himself and executed with help from corrupt LAPD officers.
Suge Knight, to me, was one of the most powerful gangsters around. He was well organized, he had a lot of power, and what gave him the power is he had dozens and dozens of police officers working in his organization.
He brought his findings to his superiors. They told him to let it go. Instead, he doubled down, and in doing so, Poole went from being a decorated detective to a dangerous liability. The LAPD cut him off, the department labeled him a rogue, and soon after, Russell Poole, the man closest to solving the murder of the Notorious B.I.G., was forced into early retirement. The case didn't just cost him his badge, it cost him his peace, his health, and eventually his life. But it also gave birth to something bigger than one man, a theory, a trail, a war between silence and truth. And from that day on, Russell Poole became the detective Suge Knight and the LAPD never wanted you to hear from again. Dirty cops, death row, and a murder-for-hire plot. Russell Poole didn't just stumble onto a conspiracy, he tripped over a war brewing inside the Los Angeles Police Department.
The reason being is because they do not want to expose to the public that Los Angeles police officers were involved in the conspiracy to kill Biggie Smalls.
As he dug deeper into the murder of the Notorious B.I.G., the names started stacking up. Not just street names, but badge numbers. It started with Officer David Mack. On the outside, Mack was an LAPD officer, but behind the badge, a different story. He was flashy, arrogant, rolling in a custom black Impala, the same kind of car that sped away from Biggie's murder scene. He was also a known affiliate of the Bloods, a suspected enforcer for Suge Knight, CEO of Death Row Records. Then there was Rafael Perez, another Rampart Division officer and Mack's close associate. Perez would later become the center of the Rampart scandal, a corruption case so big it exposed dozens of dirty cops, planted evidence, and unlawful shootings, all protected by silence and fear. To Poole, it was more than coincidence. It was a network. When Mack got locked up, the first person to visit him wasn't family. It was Amir Muhammad, the man Poole believed pulled the trigger on Biggie. This wasn't just gang activity anymore. This was an operation. Even worse, the LAPD brass didn't want it touched. They called Poole's theory speculation. They told him to drop the Mack connection. They wanted him to stop pulling Death Row into it. But Poole refused, because for the first time, everything was starting to make sense. He began linking Mack and Perez to off-duty jobs at Death Row, security details, muscle work, using their uniforms as shields for Suge Knight's empire. Knight, meanwhile, was bitter over Tupac's death, a murder that happened just 6 months before Biggie's. According to Poole's theory, Suge wanted revenge, and with his own hands tied behind prison bars, he used the LAPD as a proxy. Mack supplied the ride, Amir Muhammad pulled the trigger. The ammo was traced straight to Mack's house. The motive? Blood loyalty and retaliation.
Based on the witnesses that I've interviewed and the evidence, I believe that, Suge Knight ultimately called for the hit.
It all led back to the same place. The Los Angeles Police Department was shielding a murder plot.
And you said Police Chief Bernard Parks stopped you from investigating further because LAPD police officers were involved with Suge Knight.
Well, that's correct, yes.
But the real danger wasn't the theory. It was what it proved. The Death Row Records and LAPD officers weren't just connected, they were partners in crime. And the more Poole pressed, the more it became clear. He wasn't chasing a murder case anymore. He was chasing a machine designed to bury it.
The department, time and time again, has avoided the truth. And when you add everything up, what other reason could there be? The reason being is because they do not want to expose to the public that Los Angeles police officers were involved in the conspiracy to kill Biggie Smalls.
The confessions that made it real. By the time Russell Poole left the LAPD, his theory had already ruffled feathers. But outside the force, the world was just catching up. Because now it wasn't just speculation. People started talking. And they weren't just witnesses, they were insiders. They were men who had sat in the back seats, driven the cars, and stood in the rooms where secrets were kept. One of them was Dr. Dave, a former limo driver for Suge Knight. In a 2014 interview, he dropped a bombshell that echoed everything Poole had claimed. This wasn't just a memory. That was a mirror to Poole's theory, one that finally had a voice from the inside. Then came Reggie Wright Jr., the former head of security for Death Row Records and son of an LAPD officer. Reggie had always been seen as loyal to Suge, but even he began publicly validating parts of Poole's case. Reggie didn't say it directly, but the implication was loud. Poole had figured out something too real, too dangerous, and too close to home. Even Biggie's family started to believe it. Poole even filed a lawsuit against the LAPD, citing the exact connections Poole had spent years building. The evidence? A web of money trails, criminal ties, and police misconduct. But the real breakthrough?
Tonight's shocking allegations against the city's top cop. Former Detective Russell Poole has filed suit against the department. Poole says he uncovered dirty cops while investigating the murders of rappers Biggie Smalls and Tupac Shakur.
Jailhouse informants. An inmate who once shared a cell block with Rafael Perez came forward with a chilling claim. He said Perez confessed that the $722,000 stolen from David Mack's bank job was supposed to be payment for Biggie's hit, and that Amir Muhammad, the suspected shooter, was never fully paid because he failed to kill the second target, Sean Diddy Combs.
We got a witness saying David Mack was there, and now we got a witness saying Harry Billups was there.
Definitely him, though.
Amir Muhammad, a.k.a. Amir Muhammad.
That confession turned Poole's theory into something clear, a blueprint for murder. Everything Poole once feared, the LAPD's involvement, Suge Knight's motive, the cover-up, now had outside voices repeating it years later under no pressure with nothing to gain. And yet still, no arrests, no charges, no official acknowledgement, but something had changed. What was once a wild conspiracy was now a story too many people knew, and the man who built that story from the ground up was still out there, alone, obsessed, and running out of time. The theory that may explain everything. Russell Poole wasn't throwing around guesses. He was following a trail, and the deeper he went, the more it felt like the trail wasn't just leading to a killer, it was pointing straight at a system that didn't want justice.
And Russell Poole felt it was Amir Muhammad.
Well, David Mack, really, but Amir Muhammad for David Mack because of the crooked Rampart cops.
Right,
is what I
exactly.
believe. Yes.
Exactly.
Everything started coming together with one clue: the car. Witnesses described a sleek black Chevy Impala SS speeding away from the crime scene after Biggie was shot. Not a common car, and definitely not the kind of ride you overlook in an open homicide. But it just so happened that a known Bloods affiliate and LAPD officer named David Mack owned that exact car, customized, matching, sitting in his garage. People wanted it searched, fingerprinted, tested, but his request was denied. No reason given, just denied. That's when the walls started closing in. At Mack's home, they found thousands of rounds of ammunition, German-made, not something you'd find on every corner. And that ammo? It was the exact type used to kill Biggie. Poole was stunned. This wasn't a loose end, this was a golden thread. But every time he tried to pull it, someone up top told him to stop. Then came Amir Muhammad. On paper, he was a clean-cut mortgage broker, no criminal record, no known gang ties, but something didn't sit right. He was a longtime friend of David Mack. He even visited him in prison, the first person to do so after Mack's conviction. And eyewitnesses to the murder? They said Amir looked exactly like the man who pulled the trigger. Even the police sketch looked like it came out of his high school yearbook. For Poole, it added up. Mack planned it, Amir pulled the trigger, but someone else was working behind the scenes. That's when Rafael Perez came into focus, another officer tied to the Rampart scandal. According to a jailhouse informant, Perez was working security the night Biggie was killed, and right before the shots rang out, he made a call to Mack. He reportedly told him Biggie was in the SUV. That was the signal. This wasn't just a theory anymore. This was a coordinated, calculated hit. And who had the motive? Who had the reach even from behind bars? Suge Knight.
The time that Biggie Smalls was killed, Suge Knight was in the county jail. So in order for him to communicate with somebody on the street, he had to go through an intermediary, which was this female who was visiting him in jail.
Poole believed Suge ordered the hit as retaliation. Tupac had been killed 6 months earlier, and even if Puffy wasn't the one who pulled the trigger, Suge blamed him. Biggie was the bigger star, the louder voice from the East. Poole believed Suge wanted him silenced.
Well, that's basically what it appears to be, a retaliation. Okay, and I think Suge Knight wanted it to look that way.
And then there was the money. Mack had robbed a Bank of America branch in late 1997, stealing $722,000. According to informants, that wasn't just some wild heist. It was part of the payment, money for the hit. But when Puffy walked away untouched, the shooter didn't get the rest. Poole laid it all out. Dates, names, evidence, everything he had. But instead of backing him, the department turned their backs. He wasn't shut down because he had no proof. He was shut down because he had too much. And so Poole stepped away from the badge. Not because he wanted to, but because the truth had made him dangerous to the very people who were supposed to uphold it. In his mind, he wasn't chasing shadows. He was staring straight at them. And they were staring back. The fall of Russell Poole. Russell Poole didn't just walk away from the LAPD. He limped away, bruised, isolated, and disillusioned. He'd given the department everything, years of clean work, dedication, belief in the system, and what did he get for it? A door slammed in his face the moment he started connecting cops to the biggest murder in hip-hop history. When he resigned in 1999, it wasn't just the end of a job, it was the end of his identity. Russell had always believed in law and order. He came from a family of cops, but the silence that followed his investigation broke something in him. His bosses didn't want justice, they wanted closure. fast, quiet, and without blame, and so Poole took the weight with him. He kept chasing the truth even after the badge was gone. He gave interviews, consulted on documentaries, wrote reports, and joined lawsuits. He told anyone who would listen, even when fewer and fewer people did. They called him obsessed, some even called him crazy, but Poole wasn't chasing ghosts, he was chasing peace. He needed the world to see what he saw, that Biggie's murder wasn't just a tragedy, it was a cover-up, one that reached deep into the same force he once served. He became a man haunted by a case that never left him. His health declined, his marriage was strained, even his former colleagues distanced themselves. He wasn't one of them anymore, he was a problem. Still, Poole pressed on. The case was unfinished business, his life's mission. In 2015, more than 15 years after he'd left the LAPD, Poole stepped into the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. He had papers in hand, names, evidence. He believed the time was right to reopen the case. He never walked out. Right there in the middle of that meeting, it was alleged that Russell Poole collapsed from a massive heart attack. Witnesses say he hit the floor mid-sentence. Some called it stress, others whispered about timing, but the result was the same.
In the meeting. Wow.
In the meeting. He passes away, has a massive heart attack, dies before he hits the floor, and it's impossible to resuscitate him. And you would think of all the places to have a heart attack, the sheriff's department has at headquarters has to be one of the safest.
They ended up transporting them, Mr. Poole, to the hospital, and where he died of his injuries, or the heart attack.
The one man who fought harder than anyone to uncover the truth about Biggie's death died in pursuit of it. No medals, no apologies, no justice, just silence. To this day, there are those who believe Russell Poole was the only person brave enough to chase the truth to the edge and over it. And as the time passed, more officers, journalists, and insiders have quietly admitted that maybe Poole was right.
Russell Poole had that right all at the first time, man. And that's why they probably killed him.
But still, no one had been held accountable. No arrests, no trial, just unanswered questions. Biggie's murder remains unsolved, and Poole, he became the second man buried by that case. First Biggie, then the only cop who cared. The legacy of the only honest cop. Russell Poole died alone in a sheriff's office meeting room, but he didn't die forgotten. In the years following his death, the story he fought so hard to tell has refused to stay buried. The same LAPD that once turned its back on him slowly became the focus of scrutiny from journalists, authors, former officers, and hip-hop historians. Because even if Poole didn't live to see it, the world eventually started to listen. His theory, once called a conspiracy, is now seen by many as the most logical explanation for what really happened to Biggie Smalls. After all, the puzzle pieces never went away. David Mack served time for a high-stakes bank robbery but was never charged for his alleged connection to Biggie's murder, despite owning the exact make and model of the car seen fleeing the scene. Amir Muhammad, the man Poole identified as the shooter, was never arrested, and the LAPD, they never seriously reopened the case.
And the department, time and time again, has avoided the truth. And when you add everything up, what other reason could there be?
But over time, the whispers got louder. In interviews, even Suge Knight's former associates have admitted that Poole was closer than anyone ever got. Reggie Wright Jr., a former death row insider, bluntly said in a 2018 interview, Poole was right. Suge had something to do with it.
I throw jabs at Russell Poole. Ultimately, at the end, he got it right.
Then came the documentaries. Nick Broomfield's Biggie and Tupac gave the public its first raw look at Poole's work, showing how the LAPD not only stonewalled his investigation, but also actively pushed him out. And when Netflix released City of Lies starring Johnny Depp as Russell Poole, it brought the emotional weight of his obsession to life for a new generation. He wasn't portrayed as paranoid, he wasn't vilified, he was shown as what he was, a man who refused to be corrupted. To this day, Poole's notes, interviews, and reports are still cited by journalists trying to piece together the truth. Civil lawsuits against the city of Los Angeles have cited his theories. Even the FBI has reevaluated some of his evidence. But beyond the headlines and courtrooms, Russell Poole's legacy lives on in the contrast he created. A cop who stood on the right side of history in a department full of shadows. He proved something that's rare in both law enforcement and hip-hop lore, that sometimes the hero isn't loud, sometimes the hero doesn't carry a badge or a gun, sometimes the hero just keeps asking the question nobody wants to answer. And even though he never got justice for Biggie, his relentless pursuit became a form of justice in itself, forcing the world to reconsider what it once believed. Poole didn't get to write the ending, but he made damn sure we couldn't ignore the middle. Every interview he gave, every document he filed, every step he took against the current, it all became part of a deeper truth. The system doesn't always protect the innocent. Sometimes it protects itself. Today, Russell Poole is remembered not as just a detective, but as a symbol of what it costs to speak up, a symbol of what it means to chase the truth, even if it kills you. And as long as Biggie's murder remains unsolved, Poole's voice will echo through every beat, every documentary, every cold case file, still asking the one question the world hasn't been able to answer. Who really killed Biggie Smalls? And why did they make sure Russell Poole never got to prove it? That's all for today's story. See you soon. Please like and comment. Goodbye.